Good morning. Good to see you guys. Well, if I haven't met you, my name is Adam, and I'm the campus pastor here on our Corona campus. And today is week 2 of this series we started last week called Planted. We're talking about the power of putting down roots, of making a commitment to certain people in a certain place and going all in for an amount of time and just seeing what happens when we push our roots down deep in a community, seeing what kind of growth God brings in our life. And so we've been talking about what does that mean? How would you do that? Why is it such a big deal? And this is week 2 of that. So I want to encourage you, take some notes today, write down some things that seem interesting to you so that you can have a conversation about it when you leave here today, when you go to lunch or brunch or whatever you're going to do after this. How many of you are brunch people? Any brunch people in here? Fans of brunch? Okay. All right. Are you? Where are the omelet people at? Omelet people versus how many of you are more scramble? You like the scramble? What's the difference? I don't even know, but that has nothing to do with what I'm going to talk about. I just was curious. I just wanted to know for me. But I think if you take some things down today, you are going to, it'll click with you and you'll be able to take it with you and hopefully put it into your life. And so if you are taking notes, the title of my message is Rants and Responsibilities. Rants and Responsibilities. I really believe that everybody has, a thing or two that just really bothers them that they just can't seem to move past. Whether it's a personal pet peeve or just this little issue that gets under their skin and they just can't seem to let it go. Other people may think that it's not a big deal, but to you, it is a hill worth dying on, right? And probably right now, there are people that are sitting around you that are like, ooh, I know what it is for you, because we are not allowed to talk about it in our house. Because it's just a thing that just like pushes your buttons, and it may not even be this huge thing, but it definitely, you have some strong opinions about that thing, right? And just to give you an example so that you can contextualize in your life, I'll go first, okay? If there's one thing at which my wife is thinking like one thing that you think is annoying, there's a lot. We could do a whole series. But something that really bothers me that I get really worked up about is when places charge for drink refills. It infuriates me. Is anybody with me on this? Because if I'm by myself, I will still rant. I don't care, because to me, it is morally repugnant. It's disgusting. I can't believe that people do it, right? I already gave you $5.75 for this soda. It was a small cup. It was mostly ice in the first place, and now you're trying to charge me more for like a refill. It just feels like a ripoff. I feel like I'm being cheated and oppressed. You know what I mean? I just feel like it's wrong. I had a hard day, okay? This is how I'm trying to unwind, right? Not in a weird, abusive way, in like a perfectly, I'm going to Chili's, okay? I'm just trying to get an ice-cold Diet Coke and let that carbonated burn just go down my throat and just like, give me a hug from the inside. That's what I'm looking for. I'm going to drink 15 of these, okay? It shouldn't cost me $47 in order to do this. Like, I already bought an entree. I bought appetizers. I'm going to be buying stuff for my children. You're going to ask me to buy dessert. I'm going to tip. Give me some free refills. It just feels crazy. I think it's unfair, and I think the very heart of God is grieved over it. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Except a couple more things, because here's the thing. It really is bothersome to me. And I'm thinking of a couple places in particular. Chili's does have free refills, by the way. I don't want to throw them under the bus. I love me some Chili's, okay? But I'm thinking of a couple other places in particular. And there's one time I remember going with a buddy of mine, and I was doing my free refills. Ought to be standardized and part of American law. I was doing that rant, and he was just like, you gripe about this all the time, specifically about this place. But we keep coming here. Does that feel weird to you, right? It just feels like maybe you should let it go. Like, wouldn't it make sense to go somewhere else or to like do something about the thing that you're so frustrated about? And I'm like, I've done stuff, okay? I have lectured plenty of servers who didn't deserve it and had no effect on the policy whatsoever. And looking back, I regret it. But I've taken a stand at a couple of times. I hate that movie theaters charge you for refills. It's like $25 for a small soda. You should give me a free refill. And one time I was so upset. This was like in the past. I've matured since then. But I forced my wife to sneak in a 2-liter of Diet Coke into the theater for me. And you're like, why did you have to make her do it? Because I had a strategy. And I gave her the 2-liter, and she hid it underneath her sweater. And so it just kind of made her look like a very bosomy woman, okay? And she held it up with her arms crossed. And it just looked like she had, some implants that went wrong. You know what I mean? And then there, except for the bottle cap was like just poking out the side. So it looks like she just had like a rogue nipple just doing its own thing. I don't know if you can say rogue nipple in church, but we did it. We already did it. It's out there. We said it. It's a new year, and we're going to say things that need to be said. You guys? And here's the thing. It worked. Nobody said anything. Would you say something? Would you be like, excuse me, madam, but I'm going to need you to open that blouse because I don't think what's going on in there is right. You know what I mean? And you're not going to say that, especially when you're like 14 and this is your first job you've ever had. They just let us in. And so all this to say, I went first, okay? I've got my own pet peeves. I got the stuff that frustrates me. But what about you, right? What things set you off? What things bug you, frustrate you, get you worked up? Specifically when it comes to maybe your community, your neighborhood, our church, things that you're just like, that is annoying, that's frustrating, something about that needs to change. And it seems so obvious to you, which is why it's kind of offensive that other people don't get as worked up as you about it, because it's just like, come on, somebody needs to do something about this. And so you rant and you post about it and you raise awareness. Maybe you've actually gotten to this place where you are really good at pointing out everything that's wrong, but you do very little to make it right. And maybe you've even sort of convinced yourself, like, come on, isn't just being noticeably angry enough? Okay, because at least I have a perspective, okay? I'm passionate about things. I'm not wishy-washy. People know what I think. I think some of them are afraid of me, actually. And I wonder if you've ever done that in conjunction to the community, the people around you, the place that God has put you, where you're like, you know what bothers me? Kids these days, they're so lazy and disrespectful, and somebody needs to do something. I mean, I'm not going to serve with the teenagers. I'm not built for that, but somebody should do something because I'll post about it because it's annoying to me. This property, it's been here for, there's some things that are wrong. I'm pretty sure the roof might cave in because last week there were drips in all kinds of places. There was a waterfall that happened right here during the first service. We need to upgrade some things around. I mean, I'm not going to pay for it, but I'm sure other people have money and they would do it. But I got some vacations on the horizon, so I don't want to compromise that. We shouldn't just have church either. We should be getting out in the community. We should be doing things for other people. I mean, more than we already do. I mean, I never sign up for that kind of stuff, but I don't have time. But other people should, and I feel like I want to be a part of a place that does stuff like that, even though I don't personally do it, because then maybe I'll get credit. And as I'm saying this, you've heard people do this. Maybe you've even done this yourself. It's such a cliche because it's been happening for a really, really long time. In fact, this ancient verse that we've sort of latched onto as the sort of foundational verse for this series talks about this idea and our temptation to live our lives this way. This is Psalm chapter 1, verse 1 says this: "Oh, the joys of those who do not follow the advice of the wicked, or stand around with sinners, or join in with mockers, but they delight in the law of the Lord, meditating on it day and night. They're like trees planted along the riverbank, bearing fruit each season. Their leaves never wither, and they prosper in all they do." And we said last week that that is the goal. That's what we want. We all want the leaves of our life to bear fruit. We want to prosper in all of the things we do. And this passage is sort of pointing us in the direction of what it looks like to do that and what gets in the way. And one of the things that it says in this very first verse here is that we shouldn't just sort of stand around with sinners and join in with mockers. And yet, if I'm honest, isn't that just kind of our thing as a culture? We definitely just stand around and mock things. That's kind of who we are. It's one of our favorite pastimes. We make fun of what we hate. We raise awareness about all the things that we think are wrong, but we seldom do anything to make it right. And we might just think like, well, that's just kind of a part of our culture. It's just something we do. But this passage actually says it's sin. In ancient times, people did this. They would gather at the city gate, and they would just sort of point out things that they hated, and they would gossip, and they would talk, and they would point out things. Now, I don't even know where the city gate is for Corona, to be honest with you guys, or if we have one, but we just do it online instead. We do the same sort of stuff. In fact, even though this has been around for a long time, it's recently been given a name, and I'll just give you this new term so that now you know what to call the people in your life. This term is slacktivism. And essentially what it means is being vocal enough to make yourself feel better, but not actionable enough to make the situation better. And you know what's convicting about this? It doesn't just sound like our culture. It sounds like me sometimes. Maybe when you look at it, maybe it sounds like you too. Or at least the person next to you. That's why you nudged them just a minute ago. But it's not effective, right? It doesn't really solve much of anything. Because acknowledging a problem is not the same as addressing it. And you already know this. That just admitting that something is not necessarily fixing the thing that needs to be fixed. And yet we all know people who act as if these two things are the same thing. You ever have somebody in your life who's just like, oh man, I used to have this sort of problem, but then I figured out that I had that problem. And you're like, you still have it. I mean, like, I don't know how to break it to you, right? They're like, oh man, I used to have such a drinking problem. And you're like, oh, and then you quit drinking? They're like, no, but I'm aware I have the problem now, and so that, that means I'm okay. Are we going to get another round or what? I mean, seriously, guys, what is the plan? And you're like, I think you're confused about what actually remedies situations. And why is it that we do this? Why is it that, acknowledgement or just, attacking or just admitting something, we think that has accomplished something? I think a lot of times it's because we intuitively understand that to make a real difference is going to require some time and some energy and some money. In other words, it's costly, but griping costs nothing. And so that's what we decide we're going to do. And this isn't just something that is a struggle inside of our spiritual community. This is something that has been a struggle in almost every spiritual community. It was in Jesus' spiritual community. And in fact, I want to just give you an illustration from the life of Jesus of the struggle of this and sort of what to do about it. This is found in Matthew chapter 14. Jesus is traveling and preaching and praying for people, and people are getting healed. Like the impossible is happening everywhere Jesus goes. And so he takes a boat to this new location to minister to the people there. And this is what happens. This is chapter 14 of Matthew, verse 14. It says, Jesus saw the crowd as he stepped from the boat. He had compassion on them and healed their sick. And later the disciples said, this is a remote place. We're in the middle of nowhere. And it's getting late. Send these people to go buy food for themselves. I love that, first of all, just reading this, I love that these guys are just bossing Jesus around, just casually. Does that seem weird to you? Just telling Jesus what to do? God in human form, and they're just bossing him. And yet, I mean, you've done this before, right? Like you've noticed something where you're like, listen, Jesus, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but this is a real problem. And someone needs to do something. I think, in fact, you should fix it. And it doesn't seem like you know what you're doing, God. And so, I have some ideas about how you ought to fix it. You need to do this. And I imagine that God is rolling his eyes at you with compassion, but still. And the reason why I think that is because I think that God is very interested in being real and honest with us about what we're doing and how we're coming off. In fact, this next verse, they tell Jesus what to do. They're like, Jesus, you need to do this for these people. And in verse 16, he says this, but Jesus said, that isn't necessary. You feed them. You ever point out a problem to Jesus because you think that he needs to fix it, and his response to you is like, oh my gosh, I am so glad you finally noticed. You've got some real work to do. And you're like, well, no, I'm not going to do anything. You need to miraculously do something. You need to take an action step. You need to do the deal. I think oftentimes we are waiting on God to solve the problem, and God is waiting on us to realize that we are part of his solution. We're hoping that God is going to do something, but God is waiting for us to figure out that he wants to do something through us. And oftentimes when we get in this back and forth with God, we do the same thing that the disciples do. We immediately start making excuses as to why there's nothing we can do. This is what they say. He tells them, you feed them, and they say in verse 17, but we only have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. So there's nothing we can do. We find out later that there's 5,000 men there plus women and children. There's thousands of people there, and they're like, there's no way. There's only one little thing we could do, and that thing isn't going to do anything. And yet, I think even though we can look at them and be like, okay, this is clearly the wrong answer, I think they're further along than a lot of us. Because maybe if you're honest, you have no idea what the real needs of your community are. I mean, do you think you could really guess with accuracy what the genuine, physical and spiritual needs are of the people that are just sitting 2 rows behind you right now? Just turn and look at them. Make it weird. No, I'm just kidding. I think a lot of times we have no clue what our community needs, what our neighbors need, what our church community needs. And I got to tell you, this is part of the reason why sometimes when you offer to help, your help isn't that helpful. Because you're guessing, but you don't know. You ever have somebody help you, and they're like, oh, can I help? And you're kind of like, oh, I'd rather you not, because it's more work when you help than when you don't. Because you don't know what we're doing. Because you're trying to help with something that doesn't need your help, or you're helping in the wrong way. You know what to do, if you don't know what your community needs from you? This is going to blow your mind. Ask. Don't assume. Ask. I'm here. I'm planted. What is needed? And Jesus, obviously, in this situation, he knows without asking, but you are not Jesus. Just a helpful weekly reminder that you are not Jesus. And so, you are not going to know what everybody needs without asking them. I think it's funny in this story that they have been in this location out in the middle of nowhere without food for hours on end. It's getting late into the evening, and suddenly it occurs to the disciples that humans have to eat once a day. It just occurs to them. They just figure it out. And Jesus is glad that they notice, but noticing isn't all he wants them to do. In fact, I think Jesus wants all of his followers to move beyond observation to action, to move beyond just pointing something out or noticing something or having an opinion or feeling frustrated, to actually doing something about it. Because in reality, faith is a demonstration. It's not a discussion. It's something you do, not just something you talk about. And so when they make an excuse to Jesus, he says something genius. It's kind of his thing. Verse 18, he says, bring me what you have. And I think this is sort of always what Jesus is saying. Bring me what you have. Well, what I have is not, you wouldn't even, well, bring it to me. Let's see what I can do. Oh, but I thought if I said that, you wouldn't make me do anything. Jesus is like, no, let's look at what you've got. Let's look at the time you have. Let's look at the energy that you have. Let's look at the money that you do have. Let's see what you could actually do if you place what you've got available in my hands. And in this story, there's this boy who offers the meager contents of his lunch. And that's what they end up working with. I always like to get a visual of what does this mean? And so I looked up a painting and I found this one, which I love because it's so bizarre. It's got Beauty Salon Jesus in it. He didn't even go to a barber shop. That is a blowout, okay? It's there's a lot of volume, right? And 0 curls, and just the beard is too perfect. And so and then there's the little boy. They find the boy, they bring him to Jesus, and he's got the 2 fish and the 5 hot dogs, just like in the real story. It looks like hot dogs, doesn't it? Kosher, obviously, as these are Jewish people. And he presents it to Jesus, and the boy is happy, right? And then I love that the guy who complained 2 seconds earlier, like, we don't have anything that would really matter, now that he's presenting it, is like, look what I found, right? And he's so excited. And then there's the guy that really found the kid in the blue tunic in the front, being like, I was the one who found him. This guy's trying to steal what I did. Stupid. I think it's interesting that there's roughly, like with women and children and everyone included, probably close to 10, 12,000 people there. Only one person brought snacks. Doesn't feel very likely. One person has anything? I think it's likely that a lot of people had something, but only one person was willing to give anything. That's the real story. And of everybody, it was a kid. And he's willing to offer the thing that he has. And I think Jesus wants all of his disciples to do the same. In fact, I got to tell you, if faith is just something you talk, argue, post, and sing about, but not something that determines how you approach real people and real problems every day of your life, you are just a pretender. Because there is no real version of Christianity that won't require you to actively invest your time, energy, and money in the place that God has planted you. And here's what this boy with the loaves and the fishes in this story gets that we often don't. That saving the world starts with sharing what you've got with who you're with. And this is why when you read Scripture, every time someone had a real encounter with Jesus, they immediately begin asking, what can I share? Who can I serve? What can I share? Who can I serve? People who didn't have a kind, giving, generous, caring bone in their body, and they had a real interaction with Jesus, and suddenly they're like, who can I serve? What can I share? I got to do something. And the answer for them was never nothing and no one. And although we can look at that and be like, yeah, they were on an emotional high, I don't think that that's actually what's going on here. I think it was a conscious decision to become a different kind of person. Understanding that following Jesus means taking action. In fact, the Apostle Paul drives this point home a little bit further in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 7, where he says, you must each decide in your heart how much to give. Don't give reluctantly or in response to pressure, for God loves a person who gives cheerfully. Now, I want to unpack what he's actually saying, because you may not get the full weight of this just on the surface. Here's what he's actually saying. Beware of emotional manipulation. You, as a Christian, the expectation is not that you throw all of your time and energy and money at anyone who approaches you with a sob story. Because Paul has been around the world, literally at this time, and he's just like, come on. If you've lived some life, you know this. There are some manipulative people out there. There are some people who would love to play you and then guilt you if you don't give them everything they want because you're a Christian. How dare you? And what he's saying is this, listen, you do need to leverage your time, energy, and money on behalf of your community, but instead of just emotionally in the moment, hoping you get worked up and feeling compelled to do something, instead, be responsible and make an advanced plan. Decide in your heart, this is where God put me, this is what I'm called to invest in, and I'm going to do it whether I feel like it or not. In other words, he's saying, decide in advance to do the good thing you may not feel like doing later, and then make yourself accountable. And although we know that we ought to do this, a lot of us don't do it. We stall, right? We're just like, man, you know what? It's not the right time. Waiting for everything to be perfect. This is why you have been stalling, going back to the gym for like 8 years now. You're like, it just doesn't feel like the right time. I don't know. It just feels like things are a little crazy right now. And, maybe, and your family's like, what, the third heart attack? When are we going to, what are we waiting for? I don't understand. When is this magical time? And there's no magical time. Because here's the reality. When we stall to make a plan and then take action with the things that God is asking us to do, we tell ourselves we're waiting for everything to be just right. But you are not waiting for things to be right. You're waiting for them to be easy. And that moment is never going to come. Because things don't begin to get easy until you begin to do them. And you get out in the middle of them and you have a rhythm going. And then you're like, this is easier than when I first started. And I hated every minute. Which is why you need to make a pre-decision and hold yourself accountable. I wonder what would happen if you stopped stalling and just started on what God was nudging you towards in your life during this season. Because you know what happens when you finally stop making excuses and take the step of faith, as small as it is, that God is inviting you into? He always does something bigger and better than you could have ever imagined. That's what he does in this story. It says in verse 19 that Jesus, he's got these loaves and fish that they brought to him. And it says that Jesus told the people to sit on the grass. He took the 5 loaves and 2 fish, looked toward heaven and blessed them. Then breaking the loaves into pieces, he gave it to the disciples who distributed it. They did end up feeding the people. All the people there ate as much as they wanted. And afterwards, the disciples picked up 12 baskets of leftovers. About 5,000 men plus women and children were fed. And what I think is fascinating about this miracle that happens is that it doesn't just require the kid to give his lunch, but it also requires the disciples to serve the people and for the people to follow Jesus' instructions. Everybody in the story has a part to play. Because, and I hope you hear this morning, there are no bystanders in the body of Christ. Everybody has something to do. And when everyone engages, like in this story, everybody eats. What I think is fascinating, when I peel this story apart, you realize that if everybody doesn't have this attitude where they are willing to do whatever it takes, the whole story falls apart. There's no miracle. It just ends up being a crowd of people who are complaining. And I wonder if in a lot of settings in your life, if that's what you've settled for. Where you step into environments where there are all the raw materials for a real miracle, and you settle for just being in a crowd of complainers. It's definitely not God's will or his way. Maybe you're wondering, like, okay, good for these people then, but what does it have to do with me now? And I would say that, like, if you are a part of this church, you call this your home church, you were planted here, and you're planted here not just so that you can grow, but so that you can tend to the garden to help others grow. Because being committed to a faith community means that you give and receive regularly, not just one or the other. And some of us, we err on the side of like, oh man, I will give and I will invest, but nobody better help me. I'll never ask for help. I'll never tell people what's really going on with me. Nope. I got it good. I'll just melt down in private. And others of us are like, I just like to come and sit and receive, but I don't want to get involved. And yet, to actually be part of a community, it requires both. Let me get real specific. If someone's growth was dependent on your investment here, would they wither or bloom? Be honest with yourself. Like, do you give and serve here, or do you just sort of show up and sit in and hope everybody else will take care of everything else? By the way, if you're new with us here today, like, this is not about you. You can just sit back and be like, "Ooh, these people are in trouble." Don't you, when you were a kid, wasn't it fun to go to your friend's house when they got in trouble for a change? And you're just like, not my house, not my parents. Whew, you are going to get it. Kind of sorry they're blaming you for the thing I did. But if you're new, sit back and relax. But like, if you've been coming here for a while, and this is your home church, and this is your place, and you're just sort of observing, but have never really gotten truly engaged and involved, you are missing out. Being planted means putting in work. That's where God is calling you to. And I think much like the disciples, when we realize that we're going to have to do more in order to get more out of an experience, a lot of times we just come at God with more excuses. Like, well, all I've got is 5 loaves and 2 fish. And honestly, the loaves look like hot dogs. And they kind of smell like them too. I don't think you guys are going to want them. I mean, I found the kid. I shouldn't have to also distribute the food. When you think about it, okay, because I already did the part that's based on this other part. And it's funny when you like hear people quibbling like this, but we do the same thing. We're like, you know what? I serve sometimes, and so I shouldn't have to give because that counts, okay? Once a month in kids, and so I don't have to, actually, I'm the other way. I gave one time at Christmas, and so I shouldn't have to serve. That should be on somebody else. And yet God isn't asking us to pick one or the other. He's saying do both. Because here's the reality. If this metaphor of planted is what God is calling us to, I don't know if you've noticed that plants require more than one resource. They require water and sun. They don't really work well with just one or the other. And the same is true of the community. Plants have to be tended to regularly. And this is our garden, which means we're responsible. Not just one or two of us, but all of us for caring for each other. And not just every once in a while, regularly, because community requires consistency. Let me be even more blunt. The growth of our church is limited to the number of people willing to give and serve consistently. And even beyond that, the growth of your faith personally is limited to your willingness to give and serve consistently. Because I think a lot of times we sit back and think, oh, you want me to engage in a certain way for you or for everybody else. But the reason why God wants us to care for our community is because he knows that it benefits everybody, including you. Your consistency transforms everybody. You know the biggest thing I hear from people who begin giving and serving for the first time, after they get a few months under their belt, you know what they almost always say? I thought it was just something God wanted me to do, but I realized it wasn't for everybody else. I am getting so much out of this. I've changed so much. My mentality has shifted. My faith has grown. You realize that God is not trying to rip you off. He's trying to invite you to step into something that will gradually transform you into who you have always been meant to be. And it's the consistency that changes everything. I don't know if you've noticed this, but if you're trying to lose weight and you just eat one healthy meal a week, it doesn't work. You just kind of do whatever you want, right? There's not enough consistency, right? And consistency is required for any kind of transformation, whether you're talking about physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And this is why we encourage you to add an element of consistency to whatever it is God is calling you to. This is why we encourage people here to tithe regularly instead of just giving sporadically, which means you actually pick a percentage and it's fixed. And you're like, God, no matter what happens in my life, whenever I come into money, whenever I get a paycheck, I am going to give you the first and best of what I have, the fixed percentage, whether I feel like it or not. And as somebody who's been tithing for like 3 decades now, I got to tell you, sometimes you do not feel like it. but it is the consistency that transforms you and the thing you're investing in. It's why we encourage people to automate their giving through the Church Center app, because simply signing up for it is the commitment, and the automation is what holds you accountable. You know, I'm sure there would be times where I would have missed giving because I just wasn't thinking about it. But fortunately, we have an app that prompts me and is like, hey, it's time. Hey, we just saw the check hit, which means this goes out because you made a commitment to be a certain kind of person who is consistent. That's why we encourage people to join a specific serve team instead of just like, you know what, I'm just going to show up and then just ask someone like, do you guys need anything? No? Okay. And that's great. I hope that you do that on occasion. I hope that you are always looking for ways to help people. And it is beneficial at times if somebody's like, oh man, it looks like there could be another person. How could I help? But here's the thing about that. That requires no commitment, no consistency, no accountability in your life. It actually is not going to grow you. It's just a nice thing that you do occasionally. And I think everybody should do nice things occasionally, but it is not going to change who you are or long-term impact your community. I wonder what would happen in your life if you decided to actually put your roots down deep, to make your faith not just something that you show up for, that you talk about, that you post about, that you have worked up opinions about, but something that you sacrifice for on a regular basis so you've got skin in the game. And I think what you realize is that not only will you benefit, but so will everybody you're connected to. What if this was the year? Because I actually don't think it's a bad thing that you can see the things that are wrong. I think it's part of the image of God in you that you can tell when something's off and could be better. And I think you're right when you say that somebody needs to do something, but I would wager that that someone is you. So answer the phone because the Lord is calling. Essentially what I'm saying is this. We don't need you just to observe that our community could be better. We need you to take action alongside us to actually make it better. And so here is the handoff for you. Here's the homework. And you already know it because I've said it a few times already, but you're just hoping that I won't make it official because you don't have to do it. But here it is. I'm going to put a QR code on the screen. Well, I'm not going to, but Christian is. And this is a direct link to the Church Center app. And it will pull up a page that will show you all of the current needs that our church has for serving. And here's what I want to encourage you. If you are not currently consistently serving, sign up for a team. This is not going to put you immediately on a team. It's going to trigger one of our staff members to give you more information about a couple areas that you've selected and onboard you and introduce you to some new people and give you a part to play so that you can actually do the thing that we are all here to do for one another. And I'm telling you, if you take this step, it will change your entire next year. But you've got to do it. And the second thing is this. When you scan this, it'll take you into the app. And while you're in the app, I want to encourage you, every person here, if you're not already doing this, to step into the internet age with us and actually automate your giving. And here's why I think this is important. Because consistency is king when it comes to actually growing. Whether we're talking about our faith or our community, consistency is key. And here's the real reason I think that a lot of us don't want to automate our giving. Because on the times we're not sure we want to do it, it'll come out anyway. Isn't this the reason why you don't want to partner at the gym? Because on the days you don't want to go, they're still going to show up. And then they're going to text you and call you, and you're going to feel weird. Which is why you make an advanced decision to back yourself into a corner, to continue to do the good thing you know you need to do even when you don't feel like doing it. That is the key to transforming your life and our faith community this year. And I just wonder what would happen if we all took this seriously. This is your garden, and you are responsible. And I want to pray that as you take that responsibility, that God would transform all of us. Would you bow your heads around this room? God, thank you so much for how much you love us, for how good you are to us. God, thank you, the fact that you've given us so much in this life and in this world, and yet we are not just to be people who just sit and consume, but we are meant to be contributors, to take what you have given and instilled in us and to steward it well by sowing it back into our community. God, we want to work alongside you to build your kingdom, and we start right where we're at. Not halfway across the globe, not somewhere else, not in a different city, but God, we start right here. We begin to invest where we're planted. And God, I pray that you would help us to take some steps that we've been stalling on, to be people who serve and give. And maybe that starts really small as a little boy giving a sack lunch and putting it in the hands of God. Maybe all we have is a few dollars that we can be consistent with. Maybe all we have is just a few moments once a month. But God, may we take whatever we have and place it in your hands and believe that you're going to do something miraculous with it. And not just for everyone else, but for us. God, may we get to feel the fulfillment of having done what you asked us to do and seeing the fruit that you bring from it. God, as we become more consistent this year in seeking and serving you, God, may you prosper us in all we do for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.